Morning Survivors. It's like 5:30 in the morning and I'm awake. Love it, love it, love it. It's my favorite thing in the whole wide world. So, about to get my coffee and then we'll go out and do our morning time. See you soon. So once again, I am out before the sun and I wait for the sun to rise. You see that? See it coming up over the top of the houses back there? It's going to be a few minutes still, but every day up before the sunrise, it's so good for my health, so good for my head, right? All right, let's do this. Got the coffee. On our way to the front porch for a little morning vlog. So today we're going to talk about something kind of interesting. It is called narcissistic mortification. It's something I've just learned about, and I find it fascinating, and I think that it could indicate how some narcissists became narcissists. Let's talk about it, shall we? So the term narcissistic mortification was first used by Sigmund Freud in 1936 in his book, which the title is now slipping my mind, and I'll tell you in a moment. But anyway, in the book, he used the term, and it basically is an kind of like narcissistic injury, but it's a little further. It goes a little further than that. I don't know if you can hear my daughter singing in the background, but it's adorable and distracting to me. Her room's right back here behind me. Anyway, so Moses and Monotheism was the name of the book, and basically it kind of means, the term narcissistic mortification kind of means a dissolution of the self, or death by embarrassment, which I find interesting. And so a lot of times, well, we're going to go into a little detail here. The concept has been applied often in psychology since it was introduced, of course, and so this is, this girl's back here singing her head off, and so this is one of those situations where, a lot of psychologists have used it to determine at what point someone's illness or condition became an issue, and so at what point did the narcissist become a narcissist, right? Was it due to this narcissistic mortification thing? So early in childhood, we're kind of the center of the world in our own minds. And so kids a lot of times kind of have this idea that they know everything, omnipotence and whatnot. And so one of the things that has been used in this case is or has been talked about in this case, as far as psychology goes, is that narcissistic mortification happens when the idea that you're omnipotent is dissolved by your own life, by things that happen in your life. You suddenly realize that you're not a god, you're not omnipotent, you don't know everything. There's a lot of things you don't know. And some people take that as, okay, well, there's a lot of things I have to learn. The narcissist takes that as a direct assault to self and is almost offended by it. A guy named Edmund Burglar, did I say that right? Figured out that this was, actually created the concept and used it to determine some interesting stuff. Burglar called the concept the definition of orality or something like that. And I found that interesting because he basically said, again, that the narcissistic person will develop this inability to deal with stuff, to deal with people. And this continues in different ways. The narcissist becomes offended and is incapable of dealing with it because he thinks he or she has this sense of omnipotence, which is taken from him or her when this comes out, when they begin to realize that life isn't what they thought. And then this particular issue for narcissists will affect them for the rest of their lives if it's not handled. Anna Freud actually used the term in relation to a slightly different thing, like where the child is altruistic something or other, a definition of something. Anyway, but basically the child has a traumatic event or situation in their lives and they sort of die inside a little bit, and that's how this begins. Anna Freud said that when people would be diagnosed with something, be given a diagnosis, a psychological diagnosis, or when they had been treated different ways, they would have this narcissistic mortification where they were just horrified that they could possibly have an illness or a condition, and then they would not be able to move forward. And then another guy, Heidelberg, I can't remember his first name right now, he said, and I think it was around 1956 or maybe 1959, he defined the term a little differently. And he said basically that there would be some sort of, well, wait a minute, let me go back. Anna Freud said that there would be a personal disappointment that would help that would cause a narcissist to not be able to live his or her own life. Oftentimes, a failure on their own part. But the truth is that the failure, if we're being honest, a lot of times is because they didn't meet the expectations of another person in their life, often their parent. And they may not have actually failed, but they feel that they failed because of this issue. Heidelberg also said that there was a sudden, a lot of times narcissists in childhood will have a sudden realization that they don't have as much control as they thought they did over their life in reality. And that kind of goes back to the omnipotence issue, where you don't think you know everything, or they thought they knew everything and then they found out they didn't. So Heidelberg says this, and he says that when this happens, this causes terror in a narcissist. And so if you think about when they were children, and I don't think you're born a narcissist. I think you become one based on, at least in part, your environment. There are people who were born to narcissists and that were adopted by non-narcissists and who didn't turn into narcissists. So various studies, various things. But I think it's a combination of things. So we're going to go into this a little bit more. Like I said at the beginning of this video, a lot of psychologists since then have been, have identified narcissistic mortification with narcissistic injury. A lot of times it happens early in a person's life, and it can become very significant depending on how it's dealt with after that. So it's about the initial narcissistic injury that raises, boy, my hair looks crazy today, that raises the red flags for people, for the psychologists with narcissists. So when a child is growing up, if they receive the narcissist, they get an early narcissistic injury and they aren't properly counseled through it, it can really affect their entire lives. This all comes around to another issue called primitive. Well, it's a primitive issue. Oh boy, and it's it's for where people have been brought into a situation and they don't know what's wrong. They just know something's wrong. And a lot of narcissists grow up with this because they don't know what's going to happen next. Okay, now this is where the narcissist and the empath kind of break off, because a lot of times some children of narcissists become empaths, some become narcissists, and so a lot of times when there's an empath involved, they will turn outward and look for support in other places. They will reach out and try to get help. An empath is someone who will get coaching, is someone who will get counseling, someone who will learn things. There's a lot of self-taught empaths because they just try to figure out exactly what it is that's happening in their lives, and then they figure out more than that. So, Along the same lines, there's another concept called primitive agonies, and basically it's the initial state of breakdown when they get to the point where they've been abused. So a narcissist will often feel those primitive agonies, feel there's something wrong, they don't know what it is, they just know something's not right. And so instead of exploring the reasons why and trying to fix it, they just begin to think, well, this is how life is and I just have to deal with it. And so they develop the false self, and that's maybe how they become a narcissist in the first place. I don't know. What do you think? More recently, the concept has come into the light because of a woman named Mary Libby, who says that basically the original injury, the original narcissistic injury, is kind of what launches this whole deal, which I kind of think they've all been saying in different ways, right? So it's the underlying reason for the narcissistic rage, narcissistic injury, narcissistic behavior, all of these things. And again, I think that if you deal with this differently, if it happens in childhood, then it's going to be better. So, for example, one of the people that I've come across in my life had a parent die early, and there was a very traumatic situation where the other parent needed to liquidate some assets, and so this person came home and found his parent selling all of his stuff. And it's an issue that came up over and over again during various times in this person's life, and turns out that maybe that was the beginning of that person's narcissistic mortification. Maybe. What do you think about that? Anyway, I'm about to wrap it up. I'm running out of time. I got to get my little beautiful girl to school here, but before we do, let's do Sophie's tip of the day.
Sophie's tip of the day.
Okay, Sophie, so what do you do if somebody disappoints you, or if you feel disappointed in something? What do you do?
I try not to think about it, and I try to change the subject.
And then what do you do if you still feel disappointed? How do you handle that?
I focus on something else. Sophie's tip is just kitten.
Hello, kitten. All right. Thank you, love. So it makes me wonder if narcissistic mortification if it is the beginning of a person becoming a narcissist, what can we do to prevent it in our own children? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit here and there this week, and expand on this topic. I think it's interesting. What do you think about it? Can you imagine that narcissistic mortification could have been the beginning of your narcissist becoming a narcissist? And if so, can you, if you know them well enough, can you pinpoint the time in their life it might have happened? Just something to think about. All right. You guys have a wonderful day. I will see you later today for another video as usual. All right.
Happy Halloween.
And Sophie says, Happy Halloween. Oh yeah, we're having a kid Halloween party tonight, so I'm sure I'm going to vlog on that tomorrow. All right. Talk to you guys soon. See you soon. Oh, and as always, thanks for letting me be a part of your life and a part of your day, and thanks for being a part of mine.